But first, more breaking news we want to get to. This is about one of the most infamous terror groups, ISIS. We have learned hundreds of Yazidis who had been held captive by ISIS for more than 6 months in Iraq are now free. That's according to a local official. The group is now being held by Kurdish authorities, and among those released, children and the elderly. I want to bring in CNN senior international correspondent Ivan Watson for more on this. Ivan, if you would, put this in a context for us. Why now? How surprising is this release?
It does come as a surprise. We're still trying to get more details. Basically, Iraqi Kurdish officials confirming to us that at least 200, possibly 250 or more Yazidis from this religious minority in Iraq released in the area of the Kurdish-controlled city of Kirkuk in northern Iraq on Saturday and being taken care of. The Kurdish media having some reports of concern that perhaps there could be ISIS agents infiltrated among what have been described mostly as elderly Yazidis and also children. Why have they been released right now? That is a question we'll still be trying to explore. The Iraqi Kurdish government, the Kurdistan regional government, has in the past tried to pay some ransoms to release some of these Yazidi prisoners. It's important to note that in the course since last summer, ISIS has been ethnically cleansing hundreds of thousands of members of religious minorities from territories that they have captured in northern Iraq. This includes Christians, Shiite Muslims, other different sects, as well as the Yazidis. And they have reserved particular anger and violence for the Yazidis. They have taken thousands, Pamela, thousands of Yazidi women and girls captive since August. And I've reported on this from northern Iraq. They have been selling these women and girls, some of them not even teenagers, into slavery across borders into Iraq. And they have been distributing these captive women and girls at effective markets to their supporters. This is something that's been happening over the course of the last 6 months. Modern-day slavery targeting a religious minority. In this case, we're hearing about more than 200 of these Yazidis, mostly children and elderly, who have been released. It's going to be a long road for them to reintegrate to their devastated communities. Pamela.
Well, let's talk about that, Ivan. Can't forget that heroic rescue mission you went on several months ago. I think we're going to put up some video of that if we haven't already, of when you were on that helicopter rescuing the Yazidis. If you could tell us, here's the video, what has come of the folks that you had rescued? Then I remember that 15-year-old little girl who was crying in the helicopter. And then also, in addition to that, this newly freed group, how do they move on with their lives? Where do they go now?
Well, there's an enormous population of displaced people living in camps that have been put together over the course of the last 6 months. So again, hundreds of thousands of people who have been made homeless. When it comes to the people who are kidnapped and enslaved, some have been released in dribs and drabs. There's been an effort in some cases to ransom some of these people. I interviewed a teenage girl. She was 19 years old, and she had been taken from her village. The men separated from the women, and the men then summarily executed by ISIS militants. The women were then separated by age, and she was taken to a bazaar and then taken to a man's home where there were several other Yazidi prisoners, and she described how a 13-year-old girl was raped by that man. Now, she got out. She was in a shelter for about a half dozen other young women and girls who had been similarly imprisoned, and it appears that they were made into sex slaves. Her mother was still a captive of ISIS, and her brother was as well, while the father and her elder brother had been executed. This girl was totally psychologically devastated by the experience that she had gone through. And we have to take into consideration that probably thousands of other women and girls like that, still held captive, are going through similar ordeals right now. This is a modern-day crime on a massive scale that is still unfolding in northern Iraq. And some of the activists that I've talked to who are trying to help track down the thousands of women and girls who've been taken prisoner, in the first weeks when this disaster was unfolding, they were getting text messages, they were getting messages online from some of the captive women, and then one activist described to me in chilling detail how some 80 people she was getting contacted by a day went down to almost zero as these people were taken away. We've just heard cases of these women getting taken across the border to the ISIS stronghold in Iraq, and apparently being used as rewards to ISIS followers. So this is an incredible, incredible crime against humanity that has been taking place, unbelievably, over the course of the last 6 months, Pamela.
Just absolutely horrifying. Ivan Watson, thank you for bringing that very important story to our attention.